city of Leipzig served as a meeting point between Western and Eastern Europe, where academic connections between Russian and German translatologists were generated. This is evidenced by the various appointments and events related to this specific day. AutoCAD, he emphasized the communication of translation. The process is divided into the emission of a text in one language and the realization of a target text different from the initial language. It is important to take into account that the translator's own knowledge and experience dominates in a more exponential way. He relates translation with interpretation in translatology and establishes that the problem of code switching, in other words, of messages, is not due to the text itself, but the way of expressing it between languages. Recognizes in his model that in every communicative process there is loss, as well as entropy and informational uncertainty. He introduced the notion of potential equivalence in translation, which does not guarantee an exact correspondence between the effect of the original text and the translated text. This phenomenon is known as invariant, which guarantees correspondence between texts. Translation should be considered from a semiotic perspective. However, it's a critique for giving priority to semantic equivalence over communication. George Jagger emphasized the scientific status of translatology. It distinguishes between communicative mediation, translation, and adaptations or transformations according to whether the communicative effects of the source and target text are identical or different. He criticizes the idea that the communicative value of the target text is identical to the original, regarding that there is always an approximation but not an exactly identity. Albert Schnieber emphasized the pragmatic and sociolinguistic aspects of translation. He considers the translation as a communication process involving linguistic users, formats, images, and objective reality. All of them want to take translatology as a new discipline that studies translation, which implies a study based on the natural epistemology of translation and knowledge. Reflection proposed by these characters start from a dialogue made by the discussion panel on feminist poetics in 1986, in which creative and innovative practices were reflected, opening perspectives to writing. Simon thinks that translation is a way of literature as a criterion for debate and lines of cultural communication. According to her, the translator's own perspective drastically influences the translation of text, so it can be pointed out whether the translation is in opposition or not to the ideas expressed. It concentrates ideas on the freedom of concept whose meaning deserves more study and less dissemination of stereotypes. By this means words such as gender, culture, and identity that are linked to sexism and inferiority. Detail several events such as those experienced in this Middle Ages when the translation allowed women to be a part of letters, when they created communication networks related to politics and literary traditions. From past times, it is evident the constant struggle to break down barriers that create a constant gender breach. The fact of how exponential authorities harass and try to invisibilize the feminist position in translation. A clear example of these situations are the translation of the Bible, where they are in discussion to handle new inclusive concepts where the translator is more involved. Floto highlights the evolution of translatology in Europe and Canada, influenced by bilingualism, while in the USA gender studies have been increasing in importance since the 1960s. She adopts a feminist stand underlining how gender is a sociocultural construct, also point out the impact of patriarchal language on translation and feminist practice, which seeks to transform language to reflect female realities. Throughout examples such as body writing, it shows how female translators must face technical and ethical challenges intervening in text to break down linguistic patriarchy.